Welcome to another episode of Alpha Intuition Podcast, where we're going to help you guys crack that crazy girl code. I'm your host, Keishelle Blair, and I have my co-host back with me, Essence Yarbrough. Essence, welcome. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Keisha. It is so good to be back. And you got to tell me how your trip in Cancun went. Let me know. Let us know
Oh,
how it went.
man. I mean, it was just, there are like no words. It was just like if you could just imagine paradise wrapped up in like the perfect gift and then with a cherry on top, man, that was Cancun. It was phenomenal. I got to give it up. Next Level Speakers Academy, they they did a great job as usual. Making sure that they,
Mhm.
as an elite member, they treat us like VIP. And
Mm.
my room was just breathtaking. It was right off the ocean. It was gorgeous. Uh, and then I treated myself to a massage and to this. Oh my goodness, what was it? It was like reflex, no, hydrotherapy. So wait,
Oh, hi,
just real quick.
yeah.
Well, wait, no. This is on another level. So I'm thinking like, okay, this is going to be great. It's like, oh, we're going to put you in the steam room, put you in the sauna, we'll put you inside the jacuzzi. They didn't tell me it was going to be some cold water in between all them changes, right? So I went into the steam room first. Love steam room. 10 minutes. They gave me this nice
Mhm.
little kind of like a citrus and minty scrub all over my body. Then he said,
Mm.
okay, you need to pull this chain for this bucket of water. I'm like, is that warm water? Oh no, it's cold water. I was like, what? So dripped me in cold water. Okay, shock
Like
therapy,
in
right?
Flash
I'm like,
Dance.
okay.
Was it like in
Yes,
Flash Dance?
yes. I said, all right, now,
Mhm.
now let's go get inside the sauna. So I'm freezing cold. Okay, let's go get inside the
Mhm.
sauna. So it's like dry heat. Went from wet heat to the dry heat. Gave me put like cucumbers over my face, cold towel. I'm relaxing. All right, I'm nice and warm. Everything's cool. Then they say, okay, now we want you to go dip inside this tub. I'm like thinking, that's ice water. I had to get down. They said, just submerge yourself into your chin. I was like, oh, man, freezing cold. Did it. Bam. They said, okay, now get inside of the jacuzzi. Got inside the jacuzzi. Nice and cool. But then, like, the next shower, that was like 10 minutes each rotation. Then it was just like a little misty room temperature. So that was cool. That wasn't too bad. Then from there, I went to a nice Swedish massage with hot stones. Man, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. That's how I ended my
So
trip.
that right there, a lot of people don't know that is like hydrotherapy is not only good for the muscles. And see, this is just the massage therapist, reflexologist in me, right? It's
Uh
not
huh.
just really good for the muscles and just the nervous system, but really just for the mind. Like it literally snaps you into like another headspace. Like I know you probably be
Yeah.
mad, like, what is this cold water? But it literally
Yeah.
like if people deal with if people deal with depression and things like that, anything that they have going on, like mood stuff, doing that type of hot cold hydrotherapy, just even at home, taking a cold shower, so I'm telling you, it snaps you into another headspace. It's really healthy. So that's awesome that you did that. I don't want to say I'm jealous, but I'm jealous.
Well, I
I
can't
need
say what
that
I want to say
myself.
because you almost made me say something. So I'm just gonna say girl because that ain't what I really want to say. I was gonna say, you know.
Girl.
Like man, it was like when you talk about dipping in that cold water, it was like a shock that you can't think about nothing else because
Oh,
it's just like it just shocks your system. Man, it was. I have to
yes.
say it was really nice
Yes.
though. I had a Then it was an all inclusive resort. Basically everywhere we went. I would say the best time I had, I went to this silent party to where everybody had on
Hmm.
headphones. So a couple of times, we pulled out our
Headphones.
camera phones and recorded just to hear people singing that can't sing. It was, yeah, so yeah.
Hey, hey, look, but as long as it didn't turn into a Diddy party, Lord help us.
Oh, girl,
You
stop.
didn't
We
stay
ain't
after
gonna go
hours,
there.
did
No,
it?
no.
Look,
We're gonna go on.
you
We're
didn't stay
gonna
after
take that
hours,
one.
did it?
Now we're gonna go on our first
Girl,
topic on that one. All right. So today
that's
we are
right.
talking about mother and son relationship dynamics, right? And this is basically,
Yes,
we kind of
yes.
touched on this last week when we talked about the four agreements and just speaking on,
Hmm.
how men respond in relationships depending on the relationship they have with their mother when they were younger. Um,
Yeah.
so, kind of talk about your thoughts on that essence.
one of the things that I have recognized in speaking with people and coaching things like that, I have totally recognized that there are different types of, mother-son relationships. These different relationship dynamics really do impact how men are with the ladies, and
Mhm.
whether it's the types of expectations that they have, of the woman that they end up being with. It's whether or not they're a mama's boy and that kind of, and I don't say mama's boy in a bad way. Like that's, a normal, it's very common. I won't say normal, but it's very common dealing with the mother that wants to control who the guy is dating. I've seen and gone through that. I've seen the mom who wants to control what the relationship is doing. So that mother son dynamic is important because whoever that man ends up being with or chooses to be with, that heavily impacts his relationship with his woman.
Mm.
So I used to just ignore that and think that it didn't matter either way. Like, oh, my guy doesn't need to meet my parents. He don't need to know them, and vice versa. Like, I never really gave it much thought when I was younger, but as I got older, I really saw how important it is to like kind of investigate a little, just be a little observant of those relationship dynamics. So this is a powerful, episode today. As always, but those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get into it because it's crazy. How about
So,
yourself, though? Like, what are
um,
your experiences?
I'm going to tell you this. Most of the time, I have to say, with a lot of my relationships, I've actually dealt with men that did not have good relationships with their mothers. And, that may be one of the reasons
Oh,
why they didn't work out, which is why I'm still single right now. Because,
mm,
me, because I had an amazing relationship with my father. My father raised me. So it was a lot of things
hmm
kind of,
sorry.
that he kind of, no, I'm like,
Yeah, just suck.
it was like, there was a lot of things he kind of taught me, just to kind of look out for. So, anytime that I exited a relationship, it was because I thought about the things that my father said to me. So dealing with men who did not have that close relationship with their mother, I kind of it didn't even register until probably maybe around, I think, the fourth or fifth time to where I was dating someone, and then I realized, wow, this person didn't really know their mother, this person knew their mother. So I had to really kind of like do some soul searching within myself to kind of find out, why am I attracted to these men who don't have good relationships with their mothers? Like, what is that really saying about me?
Right.
So that really kind of made me want to start asking more questions on the front end before I started actually dating someone, to see what that relationship dynamic was like with them and their mother. So
You,
that's
you
just my
know,
perspective of
let me piggyback off of that because that's real. Because one of the things that I noticed about myself with that was actually where I realized my mind was stuck in time from my
it. Hmm.
teenage years. And then, in your teenage years, you're trying to get away from the parents because you are trying to just have this person to yourself. Y'all want to kiss, y'all want to hug and just go. You know what I mean? And I said,
Yeah.
wow, like, I missed the part where I'm supposed to, because I was like a Charlie Brown kid. You kind of raise yourself. You know what I mean? Like in one sense, like the parents are always working, and so you're kind of like ducking and dodging the parents because you just want to have your own way. For me,
Hmm.
that's kind of what it was. I realized I had taken that dynamic, that mindset of avoiding the parental authority altogether to have what I wanted. So I just took that from my teenage years and copy pasted that mindset into my adult
Mm.
years. I never flipped that switch to say, no, I need to understand the family dynamic here. Why? Because it was not really implemented strongly in my own family dynamic, you know? Excuse me.
Hmm.
So I realized there was a cycle there. There was a pattern there that came out of my own circumstances as a child. So, yeah, yeah, it's something powerful to look at. Yeah, I encourage anybody watching to kind of look and say, why is this the case? Why do I not, or why do I keep on with this type of person? So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of lead us into our next topic here. We're talking about attachment styles. So when we think
Hmm.
about the attachment styles, we kind of touched on this with the four agreements we talked about last week,
We did.
but just the different, just depending on how a person grew up and the relationship. We're talking about men, right? So depending on how the men grew up with the dynamics they have with their mother, it kind of transfers over to how they deal with the woman when they get older. So for me, like because of the men that I dated that didn't really have their mothers in their lives, a lot of them didn't really know how to treat a woman. They didn't even consider like the facts of how I felt or certain things like that. They thought about maybe if they had children. So if they had daughters of their own, it was a different dynamic they had with them. But when it came to the woman, it was almost like there was really some type of hatred that was there for women, other, not their daughter, but for the woman, because subconsciously their mother wasn't there. So they had this disconnect with how women should be treated. And that's something that I had to realize. And, so I'm just more cognizant of that whenever I date someone. And I kind of look at I ask those questions on the front end on what type of relationship do they have with their mother. And that doesn't always necessarily mean that they are going to treat me nice or bad depending on that relationship. But I think that, you know, when someone had a good relationship with their mother, I have a better chance of that man treating me right because, he thinks about women in general and how women should be treated. Um, so,
So that is powerful. Yeah, go ahead. I'm listening.
no,
That
no,
is
no, I'm
powerful.
listening to you. You go ahead.
Well, that whole dynamic of the relationship and how they are, like, I believe most men want healthy, good relationships, right? But what I'm
Hold on.
finding is the same thing you're
I
talking
just,
about. Yes.
I, okay, I'm sorry, Essence. Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
So, yes, you were mentioning how obviously guys, they're treating their daughters one way, but they're not treating the women that they're with, with that same respect or consideration, things like that. Like not as tenderly as they would their daughters, right?
Hmm.
And so one of the things though is I believe that men really do want good relationships or they would not enter into them, right? But like you said, if they don't have the education or not been taught, or they just had a rocky or a very or a certain type of relationship with their mother where they never learned to value that dynamic, or if they didn't see it valued in their own home, then it might be a bit of a challenge. And you know what they always say? They talk about how, if the bar is set so low, a man ain't finna jump to the ceiling to jump over it. He's just gonna step
Hmm.
right over it. He's not trying to reach a plateau or a level of height, a standard that to him that he just doesn't want to exhaust that extra energy. So I do believe that that is something that takes a lot of communication. It takes kind of moving into one recognizing if that's what's going on with your guy. If that's the guy that he's kind of looking at it and saying, "Hey, am I really with the woman that I want to present a standard to? That I want to, things like that." I don't know that we have those conversations enough. I think a lot of men have
Hmm.
just been taught to objectify women, and we've been taught to kind of use men, right? So we
But,
have
but,
to
but,
kind of
but, yeah,
think a little bit
but who
more.
teaches? But who teaches that though?
What
Like, you're saying, but
it's
we're
in
being
a lot
taught,
of
but
times it's environmental. A
exactly.
lot of times it's environmental.
And I'm going to say this just as a mother with my children, with my three boys, there are certain things I didn't let them watch, certain things I didn't let them listen to, certain things I didn't let
Mhm.
them do because I didn't want them to be influenced by some of the things that were in the world that I knew would probably cause them to think that way. Right. So, like, not just me mentioning about the men that I've dated who, recently or not recently, but I found out that they didn't have those good relationships with their mothers. It's like, I really didn't even consider it about how that could really cause them to have like, different type of attachment styles or detachment styles because of the relationships that they did not have with their mother because they didn't have that structure in the home to where the mother may have taught them, okay, well, this is how you should treat a woman, or these are the certain things that you should do as a man. Um, and then, to even add insult to injury, if they didn't have the father in the home either, that made it even worse. So they had to lean on other things like outside resources or out the environment to help to teach them certain, to groom them for who they became as men.
You know what? There are when I was mentioning earlier about all these different types of mothers, I actually jotted some down that I wanted to briefly throw out there, right? Because this has a
Hmm.
lot to do with the type of attachment styles that men would end up having with their women. So,
Hmm.
of course, you have the helicopter mom, which kind of leads into the mama's boy sometimes, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
that's connected to that dynamic. And then you have like the mama's man, where something happened to the man, to the father, he's not there, and therefore, like he could have passed away or left, and so therefore he is, literally like expecting that boy to be the total opposite of the mama's boy and be the
Correct.
man of the house.
Hmm.
So then he's having to take on responsibility so early on. And what these two dynamics alone with these types of mothers, she's preventing him from being with the mama's boy, preventing him from being the independent man, trusting his own voice, things of that nature, and becoming more passive in a sense, right? Just letting the woman make all the decisions. And then you have the mama's man that I like to call, where now he takes on this burden of responsibilities, but then he can feel like, he's kind of resentful over a period of time. And he could be more of that guy that's just like, he might become more of the people pleaser. He might, you know what I mean? Like, I have to do this,
Hmm.
I have to be the one to do that. And he has all this unnecessary pressure that's on him heavier. He sees it more heavily mentally than is probably even actually there, right? But then you have like the flaky mom who could have been really moody. So that leads him to having trust issues. And all of these create insecure attachment styles. All of them do. The absentee mother, right? So she could be, she can create anger in her son where he becomes like disorganized attachment, right?
Hmm.
Things like that. She could be the bossy mama, right? I could be bossy sometimes, I know, but that creates, sometimes it can make him again more passive. Um, or he just becomes like just like how she is. But then you have like the mother that applies a lot of pressure, like she's proud of her boy, he's always got to match up to this, and he's the best at that, and my son this and my son that, and she just kind of puts him on front street, right? And so then you have these different these different mothering styles where these men end up kind of detaching, for the sake of what they expect from their mothers. So that can really play a huge role, in their attachment styles with their women later on.
Yeah. So, what do you call the person that's like kind of all those wrapped up? Because all those sound like me. Like I've been
No, no, straight
the
up.
helicopter mom. I've been like the one where I feel like you're like the man of the house. I've been the one where I put the pressure on. I've been like all those wrapped up in one at
You
different
know what I
times,
call
depending
that?
on the stages of their life. Mothering.
Do you know what I call that? Right.
What?
I call that a balanced mother. Yeah, I call that a
Yeah.
balanced mother. You're not one of those things all of the time. You're allowing yourself to be human with your son. I know your relationship with your sons. You talk with them, you communicate. They openly
Hmm.
you have a very healthy balance, and that actually are you're showing all the signs of a healthy relationship with your sons because you're able to communicate, because you are supportive, because you allow them to speak to you, because you actively listen to them. So we might do
Yeah.
all of these other things, but it's with balance to where we allow them to be who they are and trust their own voice. And then they learn to trust our moods, they learn to trust who we are, and we communicate back and forth. That makes all the difference, Keisha. So that was actually a wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful response.
Yeah.
So
So what
yeah,
I'm just gonna
definitely.
say. So what about like the women who really don't know that they're doing these things to these young boys, and then these young boys grow up to become men, and then they don't even realize that they have this hatred inside of them for women because of how they were treated by their mothers.
I wish I could even answer that, but I do
Hmm.
recognize that there are men out there who are saying, huh, I don't like these certain
Women.
things in a woman. Right,
You know.
right. And it could be, and it could, and it could be, and that's the whole thing. They could take something that is very feminine and just as a woman, that's just how we are. But because they were so
Mm,
traumatized or had negative experiences or overwhelming experiences as children with their mothers, that they look at us as being a threat. And it's not
mhm.
that they want to hate us, but it's something within our behavior, just naturally as women, that could turn in their minds into a trauma. It could a
Mm,
trigger. You know what I mean? Again, remember I was talking about knowing the math of knowing your triggers,
yeah.
trigonometry. And so I think it's just each of our responsibility to, look into these things, ask ourselves, why do I feel so visceral, about women in this area?
Mm,
Well, maybe because, maybe you chose some of the wrong women. Maybe women put on the front and used you and you didn't recognize that you were being used until you were already put on Front Street, that hurt,
yeah.
that created some, you see what I mean? So going back, instead of just moving to the next woman without recognizing those things and saying, yo, okay, I need to probably pay more attention to the type of woman that I am, getting connected to here, beyond her looks, beyond her status, beyond, her personality even, what's her character? So,
Yeah.
because personality can be a whole party, but she ain't got no good character. So,
Mhm.
you know, doing things, little simple things, being true to who they are as a man, being true and honest, rather than deciding to play the game, saying, no, as a man, this is what I know I need. And therefore I'm gonna click my radar on in this direction to focus in this manner on this type of woman with this type of
Mhm.
character. And that right there can make all the difference.
I agree. All right. So, um, yeah, we kind of touched on this for a second. Um, but we talked about, you know, when a man is in a two-parent household or when a child is in a two-parent household versus a single mother
Mm,
household, right? So we already know. I've said this 1,000 times. I have no problem with saying it. I cannot teach a boy how to be a man because I'm not a man. I can teach him how to be the man that I want in my life. That doesn't mean that I can teach him how to be a man because I have no idea what it's like to grow up from puberty, whatever the case may be, to becoming a man. So when you have that dynamic to where you have both parents in the home, to where of course you have the mother who is the first teacher, and then there is a point in a child's life, in a boy's life, to where a mother has to pass that baton over to the father and allow the father to just take over and do things without interruption from the mother because they're going to do things we probably don't agree with, right? Because they know what it takes to get from boyhood to manhood. As women, we do not. Um, and so, when you have those boys that go from, that have that training from a man, are those the ones that become the alpha males? And then you have the ones that don't have that training. Are they the ones that become the stigmas or like the betas? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you touch on something really important. We see this a lot where we see videos all the time of women not allowing these men, like berating them, going off on the fathers for teaching their sons. And they say that they're a little too harsh sometimes. And there is that type of father where he is too harsh, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the father that is disconnected emotionally. You have all types of fathers, just like we have all types of mothers, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
affect and impact the child. However, I think that as women, because we chose to lay down with that man, we owe it to that man to give him the opportunity to remember. Well, for one, we have to remember that God gave him the gift of fatherhood,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's right.
He gave that child to that man the same way he gave to the woman. Well, not in the exact same way, but to father a child. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to actually trust. And this is a factor of learning, teaching, excuse me, teaching the son how to trust by letting go, by listening, right? And letting that father, because they're going to go by what we're saying, letting that father give some
Mm-hmm.
direction whether we agree or not. I'm gonna tell you, I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, look, whether I agree with your father or not, I respect your father, and I
That's right.
expect you to respect your father because I'm respecting him. If I'm respecting him, I need you to understand that it is a reason why I'm respecting him. Because, and here's the thing, and because there's a downside to that. because I
Mhm.
don't want to say that just because I respect them, you have to respect them. Because what if I disrespect them? Then that doesn't mean I want you to
Correct.
disrespect them. But I make that clear. I have my reasons because we have a trust, right? And I'm like, I know that in my authority, I can talk to my kids and say, hey, look, I need you to actively listen to your father, listen to his heart, not just his actions. You know who he is to you, you know how well he treats you. So if he's going off on you about something, or if he is telling you no about something, or if it's something that he is correcting or getting on you about, it might not be in the way that you want him to, but however, you
Mhm.
still need to sit back, do what he says in the moment, right? And then you can address it later with your father when things are calm.
Yeah. So, that's a good point that you make. But we ultimately, as women, we have to learn how to step back and let fathers be fathers, and not try to interject because of the I would say, of the motherly feeling that we have for our children, of try to protect them, because
To
ultimately this,
nurture.
yeah, to nurture. So this man who was their father, you know, they don't want to do them harm. Of course, we're talking about in the dynamic to where you have the two parent household, right? I mean, even when you have like the single mother, you have those fathers that actually want their children to do well, and they try to do things for their children, and they're going to try to guide them in the right direction. As women, sometimes we have to take a step back, and we have to allow fathers to be fathers, just like in those moments we want them to allow us to be mothers. And then there sometimes comes to a point to where, there may be some type of disagreement. And in those moments, as women, we have to understand, especially with boys, we have to take a step back and let those men be fathers to their sons.
Yeah, I could even understand. Yeah, 100%. And I could probably hear some men out there saying, well, for single mother households, and I'm dating a woman or I'm married to a woman, she doesn't let me tell her anything about her kids. Like, what do we say to them? What do we say to them
Mm,
who are with those women who's not allowing them to discipline they little bad kids?
mm. I think that is a different dynamic. So if you're dating someone, I'm it just depends. I may listen, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to take heed depending on it, because that person may not love that child the way that I do, because you're not their father. Now, if you're married to that
Yeah,
person and you see that that person gives up the same type of love to you, and he gives it up to your child, then that's a little bit different. Then I might be more willing to listen, but I'm just not going to be willing to listen to just any man just because you decided to come into my life, and now I'm not going to let you
right,
start telling me how to raise my child. That's not, I'm not okay with that, because
right.
ultimately that child still has a
Mhm.
father. Because now you're introducing another man into this child's life, and you're allowing this man to tell this child something. What is that actual father going to say? That might not sit well with that father. So you have to think about that as well.
And I wonder what that man has seen in his own relationship. And like if he was in a single parent household, single mother household in particular, how did he see his mother, interact with men over him? Because there are some women who go the selfish route, right? And they just completely ignore the son, right? They ignore the child, the son or the daughter, for the sake of the man, right? And I'm talking about ignore. I don't mean like keeping protecting and
Mm,
keeping separate. You know what I mean? I'm talking like did you hear about that woman? She left, went on a cruise and left her child at home. You know what I mean? And
mm.
so little things
That's
like that. So you
neglect. That's
have
different.
it's neglect. So, but what I'm saying is there are men that have grown up with that in the back of their mind. And so they feel like they have, if they've been in the child's life, right? I'm talking about if they're like in a serious relationship, married, I've known relationships and marriages to break up because they allow the children, the mom would allow the children to cuss out, go off on, and decide that they just didn't want their mama with anybody else. And so they weren't going to like them. So the mama just said, well, I just let them be how they are. And they've ended up in divorce. I'm not trying to go all off topic with it, but
That's not
well, I
cool.
kind of have, but it is a thing that I hear a lot of men very upset about and hurt over because these were women that they loved, wanted to spend the rest of their lives with and provide for, but the children, they just would not get on the same page with blended families. And so, speaking about two parent households in marriages, you do increase your chance. The percentage of divorce in blended families is raised. So, after that initial, a marriage that's, where they bring in the kids together, that it actually goes up higher, the risk for divorce with blended families. So it's
Mm.
something that men do have to, I think as people, we have to look at, and we have to go into our relationships, especially those of us with children, whether we're from single parent or two parent households, with the mindset of having patience and understanding, communication and respect, and of course, with all the four agreements, right? that we
Well, I'm going to throw
talked about
something else
before.
into this dynamic because
Mhm.
um, I don't think that two parent households are always the best environment for a child because there are a lot of
We
things
hear,
that can happen in a two parent household. You got the father cheating on the mother, you got the father treating the mother bad. So there are all type of things and we're gonna stick with the boys here. The boys can see to where they take that and it becomes a generational curse. Now they're growing up, they're cheating on their wife, they're doing the same, they're repeating the
yeah,
same thing that they saw their father do to their mother because it's just subconsciously they think that's what's supposed to be done, and it's not always right. So I mean, I don't think that children I don't think that that's the standard. I think ideally when you have two people that love each other and that they treat each other well, that's the best environment for a child to be in. So even as a single mother household, my children, I chose to be by myself for a very long time. I dated, and if I didn't think that the person was actually somebody I wanted to have around my children long term, then I chose to not bring that person into my home because I thought about my children in that moment. And if I was married at one time, but to my oldest son's father, but mother three children, I was not married to their fathers. And I thought about that, considered it, but I chose not to because the relationship didn't work out. And I thought ultimately this may not be the person that I want to have around the other children. Um, so as a single mother, I felt like it was just best for me to raise my children and to make sure that I had a healthy relationship with their father. And then also I put other men in their lives um, that were going to be role models for them. So, as a single mother, I thought about that. And now that they're all adults, well, the youngest one is 17 and his father is raising him. Um, but now that they're older, it's a different dynamic for me as a parent when I think about bringing someone in my life because even though they may still be a stepfather, but they're still not the authority figure in the home where I have children.
yeah, and that's, I wish, I thought about that for a while too. I ended up still being, after the divorce, I just still ended up like wanting love, but I was like, I don't know who I could bring around. I don't know.
Hmm.
And so people would not just be hanging out with my kid. I couldn't have anybody over like that. So I took some years. I took like 10 years of not like, and people don't understand why that is, but at the
Hmm.
time, I had a special needs child. I had to focus on them. And I felt like it would be unfair if I know I have to put all this attention to my business and my children, and then I want this guy to come in seriously. You know what I mean? So I felt some type
Yeah.
of way, like I was kind of back and forth. Like, do I want to bring him into that and try to get him? Because it's a program I had to go by. I
Well,
didn't
I'm
want
going
to
to
have to
say this,
throw that onto the man.
and I know that some guys that I've spoken to, they've also talked about it's maybe difficult for them to be with women that have children because they don't want to get attached to the
Yes,
children and the relationship doesn't work out, and then they have to deal with their own emotions about severing that relationship that they bonded with this child now. Like, maybe men that don't have children and now you bonded with this child and now you have to sever that relationship because you and the mother didn't work out. So, with
right.
that's a whole nother I think we're gonna get into the next one here, which is emotional expression. Like, you have some men that don't want to. Hold on here. I think I clicked twice. There we go. Like, that maybe consider their emotional expression depending on the relationship that they had with their mother. Were they open to express themselves or were they taught to suppress those emotions? And, what we do as children, we carry into our adult years and it helps to shape and form us who we are as people. So, I've dealt with a lot of men who were just closed off, who were not emotionally available. And I never really
Yeah.
considered the fact that it may have been due to the relationship that they had with their mother when they were younger.
Yes, because think about it. When, and I've been guilty of this, and I had to really check it. My son would say, and this is when he was younger, and it's crazy coming out of the mouth of a babe. He's like, Mom, you ask me how I feel about something or what's on my mind. I share it with you, and then you just load me with everything that you think. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. And it
Like
checked me.
clutching
It
them
checked
pearls.
me. Right. Right. Christian Pearls, girl. And I realized I wasn't actively listening to him to help meet his need or to just receive from him. I was listening to fix. I was listening to, control the situation, right? I was listening to keep from any harm coming, right? I went into this nurture mode, and it's so much so that it was preventing me from being the mother that he needed me to be. And I think that as mothers, as nurturers, we have a tendency to do that. Sometimes, if not all the time, we don't listen. We're just like, no, you need to just do it this way. Da, 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 da. Well, why did you do that? Well, why would you, and so I believe that as men, they get, they might get that from their mom, right? And so they
Mhm,
learn, let me disconnect. Or mom got it, let me just step back because I don't want to get
mhm,
yelled at. Let me, let me, or she could have been overbearing, right? Like she could have just been angry and mean and moody. So let me not say anything. Let me tread lightly so that I don't cause any more trouble. Let me do something. I don't want to do anything that's going to make her unhappy. So all of these, and literally that comes out of a lot of the types of moms that I mentioned earlier.
mhm,
Um, Again, especially the narcissistic mother or the mama's boy, because it's like they'll take advantage
mhm,
of the boy. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter how you feel. It's about how you're making me feel in this moment. And that's what matters. So men become more emotionless, rather, or they
mhm,
have the emotions because it's in their minds, right? They'll feel it in their bodies. It becomes this visceral thing, which is why they'll end up reacting to us as their women. But ultimately in their feelings, they'll turn around and kind of, just detach. It's easier for them to detach. You know what I mean? So
mhm.
yeah.
Um, so, I have to say that with my boys, especially the first two, I did a lot of yelling. And I can actually see the difference in their behavior as opposed to my younger one because I don't really yell at him as much. I listen a little bit more. But me being a younger
Right.
mother, I did not listen as much as I should have to the older ones. It was more of a dictatorship to where I told them what they needed to do. And I've had these
Right.
conversations with them as they've gotten older, just to try to make sure that um, they don't do the same things to their children that I did to them. Because, of course, when you become a parent, depending on your age, you just kind of just repeat the things that have been done to you. And, that's all I heard when I was in the house. It was a lot of yelling and screaming. So that's just what I did. It, subconsciously, I never even thought about it. But as I got older and, started doing my own soul searching and self development, it made me just think about the environment that I had my boys in. Even though they're all good men, I have to say my boys, they've grown into some great men and they treat women well.
Right.
But I still wanted to make sure that I had those conversations with them, and they said some things to me to where it's like, man, I didn't expect. But I dealt with it because I told them I didn't want them to carry that into their parenting when they decided to have children because they didn't deal with it with me. So I opened myself up, and I know, and a lot of people may not do that, but to me, it actually helped me to understand, where I needed to grow as well, and I was able to talk to them about just how. Um, I could help repair some of the things, some of the damage that I did that I wasn't even aware of, that I did to them when they were children, mentally, just
See,
because of the yelling or the screaming, and it's just like, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
no, but that literally, that is exactly what we're healing. We have to do that. Healing
Hmm.
shouldn't take when they're grown men, when they're like
Hmm.
in their, you started talking to them before they had to be launched out into the world like that. You kind of started
Hmm.
taking in more information and observation of yourself with them and was just like, huh, you know what I mean? So you were able to go back and have these mature conversations with them, listen to them actively, and start the healing right where y'all were, so that
Right.
they're not 30 and 40 years old and 50 disconnecting from women because all women are like this and they don't know where that feeling comes from viscerally. You know what I mean? They've
Correct.
never connected with that. You've taught them at an early age. Because the same thing with me. So because remember, I dealt with depression really
Mhm.
bad. So for me, it was more so because my daughter is the oldest. And so she was the one that's like, let me be the people pleaser. I don't want mom to feel anything. Because I don't, let me get my attention from her while I can. Oh, she's in a good mood. You see what I mean? I had to heal from that myself. And I had to wake up and say, oh, wow, I need to explain something to my kids. I owe them my deepest apologies and a change of behavior. Right.
Mhm.
So once I did that, it was a total shift, and they became self-aware of their
Mhm.
triggers. So the healing starts as soon as you can start it, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be left up to them by themselves, burdened on their shoulders. It starts with our own humility and the ability to be mature. There was a clip, I don't know if you saw this clip very briefly, of this woman. They were on I don't know if it was fake or not, but I know that this
Mhm.
woman was on this show with her daughter, and her daughter was like, I was violated, I was sexually violated, and you didn't help me, you told me da 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 da. Like she
Mhm.
pushed, like the mother had just
Mhm.
was like, I can't handle that right now. Why you even bring that to me? And
Wow.
the mother said something very powerful. She said, I couldn't handle your stuff because I didn't even know how to handle my own stuff. How was I gonna
Well,
help
look,
you?
well, you have to think about it. Sometimes people bring children into a situation and they are still broken inside and they're still dealing with their own
Yes,
trauma. And they don't even think about the
yes.
trauma that they start inflicting on their children. So now you have a child that grows up and starts saying, oh, well, my mother did these things to me, where the mother is not even really considering what she's done as a child, but you've done the exact same thing to your child that your mother or father has done to you. And you don't even know it because you're
So
constantly focusing on the past and you're not thinking about what you've inflicted on someone else that you brought into this world.
So let's look at what exactly. So let's look at what the conversations have been, all the drama that's been going on about 50-50 relationships and all of this stuff, right? Think about it. So now over 70%, they say, of the Black household is the single mother, right? As
Hmm.
far as raising the children, over 70% or something like that, right? Is the Black woman raising the children. It doesn't mean that the Black men are not involved actively in their lives. Black men are
Hmm.
actually deemed as one of the most active in their children's lives than any other race of men, right? But the fact remains that these men, these boys are majority in the house with their mothers, going through having these traumatic interactions because they're not knowing. Everybody's had bad experiences trying to figure it out or not trying to figure it out. So now these same men grow up and they say, this is unconscious or subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
This is just coming out in their actions. They're like, why should I do this for a woman? What worth does she bring to me? What value is she really bringing to me? She just laying down with me. I could pay for that. All these conversations,
Hmm.
right? Think about it. Why would a man, when viscerally that's something he has not explored yet, he doesn't know why he's truly saying these things other than he's just thinking about the financial loss, right? He's scared of that. That's the only thing he can hold on to because any other value has been devalued from his childhood. He has had
And
all these traumatic experiences with his mother. Why am I in a rush to pay for this woman's lifestyle unless it's in a selfish, sexually objective manner? So,
hold up.
that's separate. Hmm.
I'm just thinking, so, but what, in that same scenario where you're talking about the 50-50 and all this stuff, I guess what really is mind boggling for me is when you have the man who says to a woman like, "What are you gonna do for me?" or like, "What's in it for me?" It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not cut from that cloth. I'm not into paying no man's bills. I'm not doing that for you. I'm not. I mean, if I buy you something nice, it's because I was out and I saw something that I thought you might like, but it's not gonna be a requirement. And I don't require a man to buy stuff for me either. So, like, that's not something I require. I really require someone to just be a good person. And if you
Yeah.
choose to do nice things for me because that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I mean, I've actually dated some guys or girl that'd be like trying to just act like I'm a sugar mama. It's like, wait, hold up, bro. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
not. I'm like, you out here making
Yeah.
bills you can't pay, that's on you. Just and women, it's the same way. If you're out here making these bills that you can't pay, why are you looking for someone else to pay to support you
Right.
in your habits that you can't support yourself? So yeah, I'm not on board with
Yes.
that at all.
Exactly. But this is my point exactly. Where, like the mama's boy was taken care of. He's not going to tell anybody I was a mama's boy. My mama took care of all of my big decisions. My mama told me what to do in school. She told me where to go. She told me who to date. She told me, you see what I
But how
mean?
many
Like,
men do you got like that? A lot of them know, because that's what mamas
there
do.
are, we're good. Exactly. Right. But here's the thing. It's when it's about us as women learning when to relinquish, when to find balance, but we don't because of our own
So let me ask you this
unconfronted,
though, right?
non-confronted traumas. Hmm.
But what about, so let's just say as a woman, right? If you have those situations to where you're telling your child, or the male child to do all of these things up to a certain point, right? Because you want them to be successful. Now, let's just say, at like 15, you decide that you're not going to tell them, you're going to let them just go their own path. Well, by the time they're 25, they're going to be back in your house because you ain't even helped to raise that child. And now they don't know right from
Well,
wrong because they've hit their head so many times. So for me,
yeah.
because I mean, I'm saying this because I was that type of parent to where and my children have gotten on me about this, but I basically told them that God didn't give your life to you, He gave it to me, and I'm gonna shape it and mold it as I see fit. And when I think you're ready to handle it, then I'm gonna give it to you. But until then, you're gonna do what I tell you to do. That was me as a mother, right? It didn't always work out in
You
my favor, but I have successful children, right?
well,
So,
but see, but there's a difference. I'm talking about, remember how I talked about women emotionally raping men? You're not raping him of his emotions at all.
well,
What
that's
you're doing is giving him, that's totally different. This is you guiding. This is when we're guiding.
well,
And
you're talking about a
you
child
have
and
to,
talking about a partner, so that's two different aspects.
so hear what I'm saying though. It starts early. You see what I mean? We're trying to manipulate our way. There, you have some mothers that manipulate the emotions of their sons for their own will, their own
Mm.
comfort, right? Not in a sexual way, nothing like that. But you have, I'm talking about just in just normal human behavior, where it's not, I won't say normal, but it's a sometimes it happens. But then as you have these men, and they go into relationships, then you do have where they're like, why don't you talk to me, why don't you tell me this, or I need this and I need you to give me blah 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 blah, right? Emotionally, that man is just not willing to give, right? And that woman to try to stay in the situation. But hold on, here's the thing, here's the difference. The Bible says, show them, like teach them, right? When they are young, and when they are older, they will not depart from it. So whether they are, because we have been given by God the duty to give them instruction, right? And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, look, let's do this path. Now, if you come across something else and you're older, just remember what I've taught you and know that you have this under your belt, right? That's wisdom. That's not necessarily, it's demanding a way, it's demanding your way, right? Until he finds his own. So there's a difference there. You see what I'm saying? Okay, you want to do this, okay, but you also gonna do this. This is what you're gonna put some effort in. You see what I mean? There
So,
is a clear difference there.
what about and I know we didn't really even touch on this, but just the emotional expression that men give to other women, that do you think that is based heavily on the relationship that they have with their mother, on whether or not they're going to be the ones who put up the communication barriers, or the ones who are going to be more open to express
Yeah.
themselves to their partners, depending on the relationship that they have with their mother?
It plays a role. The mothers definitely play a role even as they get older, because again, the healing can start taking place at any age as long as both parties are involved and willing. So I have
Mm.
seen broken mother son relationships be mended really well simply because the mother chose to stop and listen, right? And say, hold on, what's going on with this? And they investigate it together. And the next thing you know, You're seeing a happier relationship. You're seeing him choosing women that are more emotionally in tune, able to communicate in a more healthy way, not emotionally all over the place. You're seeing more of a balance in what they choose. That is what I have consistently observed.
Yeah,
So
instead of
yeah,
that toxic relationship. So, like, this is
yes,
the next episode. Do men look for their mother in their ideal mate? When you talk about
Mhm.
depending on what the dynamic was when they were younger, whether they saw their mother in a toxic relationship or whether their relationship with their mother was more loving or caring or whether their mother was distant, do they subconsciously look for that in other women to where they end up in toxic relationships or whether they end up in healthy relationships, depending on what the relationship was with their mother as a child.
Yes. Um, it's so subconscious though. It's so
Mm-hmm.
subconscious because the brain is constantly attracted to familiarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Bible itself, it's so funny because the Bible itself says, "Be weary of familiar spirits." Right? So you have to test familiarity because the brain is developed for the sake of behavior and pattern and consistency in a healthy society to fall into consistent patterns. But it's still our conscious job, for our mind to control what our brain and body do. So we have to stop at some point, and that's why teaching about self-awareness is supposed to come from the elders, is supposed to come from the village, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be held accountable to certain things. And so that's why losing that family dynamic the way that we have has really created an imbalance in our society, in our dating experiences, because we have not learned how to become self-aware to say, why am I choosing this same type of woman? Why am I, that's what we do. Why am I choosing this same kind of man? And we've gone over this before, and each time it's always a mind boggle because it's like you're not happy. You don't want that. Why do you keep going back to it, Essence? Well, it's because my brain is comfortable with the dysfunction. It's comfortable because it's familiar. I know this better the devil I know than the devil I don't. But that's all taking place on a
Mm-hmm.
subconscious level.
Yeah, so that's what when I think about dating men that didn't really have a good relationship with their mothers. It's like I didn't even realize it until one day I thought about like, wait a minute, he didn't really know his mother. He didn't know his mother. He didn't really have a good relationship with his mother. It's like what in me is causing me to be attracted to men that don't have good relationship with their mothers. And I thought about it. Maybe it was like a trauma bond because I didn't have a good relationship with my mother.
Mm, it happens. It's
You know, you
that's
know.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
it may have just
I'm
been
gonna
something
tell
like
you,
that common bond that we had, and that's
yes,
what maybe we had similar traits. And I'm sure like a woman's dynamic or a girl's dynamic is different than a boy's dynamic with their mother. But ultimately, if you have that disconnect with the person who's supposed to be your first teacher, and then
yes,
you see subconsciously that same thing or something similar, like you said, your brain likes familiarity, right? So if I see something
hmm
similar in this person, it causes me to, I'm drawn to that person. So I had to, like I said, I had to do some soul searching for myself to try to figure out why am I attracted to these men that don't have good relationships with their mothers. And then ultimately
it's a
the underlining cause was because I didn't have a good relationship with my mother.
yes, and it is a perpetual Stockholm syndrome.
Hmm.
It is the trauma bond, right? I don't know
Yeah.
if you know about that experiment where they learned about this trauma bond, because it was something about this guy or this person. He's walking around and he has this little duckling, and he's constantly like stepping on the duckling's foot. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist nor a therapist, so I don't really venture into this realm too much. But I definitely remember in college, like it was some, experiment similar to, or talking, if I hope I'm
Hmm.
getting it as right as I can get it. But the thing is that the more he stepped on this duck's foot, the more this duckling attached to him.
Hmm.
Because the person that you're being hurt from is the person that you're looking for the healing from. Like, you owe me this healing. You did this. Do you know that you did this to me? Surely you
Hmm.
have to be aware that this hurt me, and you must care about that. Why? Because you might care. You care, but you don't care enough to leave. You want a resolve from the very one that is causing the pain. But
Hmm.
the pain that person is causing, whether intentional or not, they're not going to see it. They don't want to see it for whatever reason, or if they do see it, is to manipulate. And why would you
Mhm.
trust your healing in the hands of someone who manipulates? So it's just not going to happen. You got to move on. That is how you find your healing, is by no longer sustaining the injuries, over and over and over again from that person. So you have to leave, and we have to do that with ourselves. When we find a
Mhm.
pattern in our own mind, we have to stop causing our own suffering, and we have to walk away, decide to make a conscious decision. Whoa, this is what I'm doing to myself, or we'll just keep
Mhm.
going back to that same type of person, right? We'll have
Yeah.
that men will do this. Men will go to the same type of women over and over again looking for a different result, right? And they won't get it necessarily, or they end up settling a whole lot and still not happy. So if they just take the time to just say, hold on, let me check this in myself, that I realize I'm not safeguarding myself well enough, or I'm doing it in an unhealthy manner by just being cold, cutting off, sexually objectifying. That's not going
Mhm.
to get me the character of woman that I truly desire and want to trust. I don't want to have to play a game. So let me fix what the game that in the pattern that's going on in my mind, so that I could take this and flip it on its head and create new healthy behaviors with women. Therefore, I'll get a different result, a better result.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
And as women, we have to do the same thing. It's just, it's one of those
Agreed.
things. Hmm.
So,
My
um,
hearing aid thing is just
that's
crazy.
okay.
Sorry, it's just
So,
falling out.
our last topic here is just talking about resolving conflict and setting boundaries. And I think that men who have good relationships with their mothers probably have uh, a good outcome when it comes to trying to resolve conflict and setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that the ones who had, those mothers who were there when they were younger, still there when they were adults, that they can go to their mothers when things happen in relationships and talk to their mothers about the issues that they're having with women. It helps them to not become toxic in relationships, and it helps them to actually to resolve conflict better than the men who don't actually know their mothers. And then also just to set boundaries, because sometimes you have those women who are toxic or who try to what's what I'm looking for, who try to push a man into doing something. Um, by saying
Marriage,
negative
any of that.
things, or even that,
Oh,
or just saying things
my bad.
negative, or just trying to emasculate a man, right? They say those
Oh,
things.
yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about. So it's like you have women who will try to, I can't find the right word, but they just try to get they try to get a man to react by doing certain things, by saying certain things, by being a certain way, for whatever reason. And I think that men who have a better relationship with their mother, they know how to set those boundaries and say, hey, look, I'm not into that. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to allow you to talk to me this way. You're not going to do these things to me. So this is what's going to happen. And if you can't agree with this, then we're going to just cut this off right here. And most of the time, women, we like guys like that. We like guys who set boundaries with us. We like guys who actually are
Yeah.
stern and um, who know how to be an alpha male when the time is right.
Yes, because that an alpha male for sure in this case is being a leading male. Like you are
Correct.
choosing to stand in the forefront of your woman and say, "Hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm needing us to discuss this, make some changes. I'm accountable, you're accountable." Like that's a leading man that is stepping out, because you have other men who are leaders, but they're more quiet. They're not, but we're just using this for sure as that example of like, hey, I have to be in the front with you. I've got to let you know I am present in this relationship. You know what I mean? Sometimes alpha men get a bad rep, like they're just trying to, fluff their feathers around everybody. And not every
Yeah.
man does that who leads, right? But in a relationship, a man cannot be afraid of being seen. He cannot be afraid of being heard or any of that. And
hmm
so therefore, him setting those boundaries, him having these skills of conflict resolution, it's, you might say, I don't know how to do this with my woman. I don't she ain't going with that. Well, one, first just go start with Google.
Mm,
Google conflict resolution in a toxic relationship. Google how to set boundaries in a toxic relationship.
Yeah,
Google
and I
that
don't think
stuff.
boys, I don't think men are going to do that. But I think what they will do is go with what they know. And if you think that something is
Right.
not right, you're going to shut it down. And that's what most alpha males that I
Yes.
know, they just nip it in the
Yes.
bud because they are leaders by nature. And
Yes.
you don't have to be loud. You don't have to be out. You don't have to be outspoken, but you do have to
Right.
be someone who is in control of your surroundings
Yes.
and in control of your environment. And you're not going to let anyone come and just disrupt that by trying to penetrate that barrier that you know you set up for your life. So when I have men like that, you know, I'm actually very highly attracted to those type of men who actually know how to
Me
set
too.
boundaries and know how to take control
Hmm.
and make sure that they're not aggressive with it, but they just understand this is what needs to be done. I don't have to yell. I don't have to scream. I don't have to be aggressive. I'm just telling you this is what I want. And if you want to be with me, this is what's going to happen.
Right. And it's not always a, my way or the highway type of deal with the
Correct.
woman or the man. It's like learning how to compromise and truly listen because anybody can say it's my way, right? As far as in a relationship
Hmm.
dynamic, because it's a cop out for not having to listen to the other person and them not having to adjust or attune, right, with the person that they say that they want to be with. And we're all lazy like that. Why? Because the brain is lazy like that. The brain is
Yeah,
accustomed to what it's accustomed to, and it wants to stick to that. But
that's
yeah.
right. That's right. Man, so that was my last topic of discussion that I had for us, right? So this was a
It was
really
great.
great topic, and I mean there's so many things I think we could have tapped into, but ultimately,
Yeah.
you know, being a mother of three boys and you having a son as well, we definitely understand that dynamic that we have to have with our boys because we want them to grow up to be great men, and it starts when they're young. We have to think about the men that we have in their lives, or just the people that we put them around to help them along the way, and also the things that we say to them that we instill in them, and make sure that we don't give them things that cause them to be trauma bonded to in any type of way or cause them to have trauma when they grow up to become adults. And, you know, sometimes it is hard for us as adults to admit when we're wrong, especially when it comes to children. But you know, women out there, if you know
Gotta
that
get
you've done
over it.
something to your children and you need to correct it, you need to do it while they're young. Don't wait until, like you said, to they're 30, 40, 50 years old. You need to nip that in the bud when they're young because these men are growing up and they're going out here and they're dating these women and they don't because they didn't have the right upbringing from their mothers and now they're taking it out in the world and they don't know how to treat women. So ultimately, yeah, we got to make sure that we start when they're young and train them up right.
Or they know how to treat women, but they're treating the wrong women that way.
Mm.
I,
But
I said that sounds bad, but you get what I'm saying. The women that are doing them wrong, they
correct,
don't know how
because
to
you do
leave
have
them
some women.
alone.
Yeah, and so which brings me to my next topic. So I don't know if it's going to be the next show, but I have a fellow podcaster of mine who has a show called Fatherless Daughters. So I'm going to see if I can invite
Mhm.
him on the show. Um, and
Yes,
get him to
that would
talk
be
about
awesome.
just the flip side of it and to talk about those women who actually have good relationship with their fathers and the ones that don't and how they enter this world and how they operate and how they affect the men who actually had good relationships with their parents. And those are the ones that we consider to be like the wrong type of woman that we want our, you know, our sons to date,
Right.
right? So
Yes,
anyway, so
that's
that's
powerful.
what was yeah, that is very powerful. So I can't wait to have him on the show. I'm going to try to see if I can reach
Yes.
out to him to see when he's available because that would be a great topic
Ooh,
of
honey.
discussion,
Girl,
especially when we're talking
yes.
about female
Yes.
behavior from a man's perspective.
Yes.
Whew, can't wait to hear
Yes.
it.
That right there is priceless. Yes. Thanks for having me
All
on
right.
again, Keisha. I appreciate it.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. Well, what man, thank you so much. This has been an excellent show, and we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up, and we will see you guys next week. Peace. Y'all have a good week.
Deuces. Bye.